What is the secret sauce to create these kind of leaders?
Why does it happen that we choose the right people? How we select people is the actual secret sauce behind it.
I don't think we have a problem on capability. It's also about how we position the mindset, the confidence. Is that something that you're also seeing and maybe coaching some of the leaders of other organizations on?
One big thing that has changed in the last 10 to 15 years is that we are no longer just delivering services. And today we are not out there saying that I can do anything you want. We are now saying I can add value. So that's the change that's occurred.
Is it the right thing to do in terms of trying to become another China? Is that even a fair target for us?
I am quite clear that India must move towards products. I absolutely believe in 15 years we will do so. Because what it needs is aspiration. We have to have technology sovereignty.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to Zinnov podcast's brand new sub-series Legends and Legacies, where we delve into the stories of iconic leaders who shaped India's rise in the global tech landscape. The visionaries, founders, and CEOs whose decisions built not just companies, but an entire ecosystem. Our very first episode features Mr.
Ajai Chowdhry,
a visionary whose imprint is etched into India's earliest tech blueprints and whose voice continues to shape its future across policy, innovation, and industry. Absolutely enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you do too.
Hello, Ajay, and hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of Zinnov Podcast Business Resilience Series. I am Sidhant, President at Zinnov, and your host for today. I'm truly honored in having Ajai Chowdhry joining us today. Ajay needs no introduction. Ajay is a pioneering entrepreneur. He's a Padma Bhushan awardee. He's one of the initial co-founders of HCL, going back to 1976. He has been instrumental in shaping not just the Indian technology services space, but also more recently the electronics landscape, the manufacturing semiconductor landscape. And he's also at the forefront of creating government policy to enable and foster the technology ecosystem in India. And so I'm really looking forward to understanding a lot from him in terms of tech services and also the new technology ecosystem in India. So Ajay, it's a privilege to have you here. Thank you. And I'll start with some of my initial questions and look forward to getting your candid responses. So the first thing, Ajay, that comes to mind, and like I said, we've been doing this for many years, about 2 decades, working closely with the tech services community. One of the first things that comes to my mind when I think HCL is Leadership Factory. And if I look at just the current industry, you have Sandeep Kalra, ex-HCL president and CEO of Persistent, Sukamal, CEO of Cyan, 27 years in HCL, Sri Krishna, current CEO of Hexaware, ex-HCL. We have many more. You have Sandeep Kushior, even CP Gurnani was early career at HCL, Ashok Vemuri. If you look at some of the board members, Rohit Kapoor, Vijeta Bali, I can go a long list. What is the secret sauce to create these kind of leaders?
You see, from the beginning when we started HCL, I recall that literally year one, we went to IIM Calcutta. We gave a talk on what we were looking for. And that's when we were zero revenue. When we talked to them and said, look, this is what we want to do. We want to take the microprocessor and change the world. We want to set up this design and manufacturing company, which will be called Hindustan Computers Limited. A lot of the kids there were very excited. But after the presentation, they walked up to us and said, you are just starting out and we really don't know whether you will survive. Those days, there was nothing called startups. It was a very strange animal that was in front of them. But one answer that we gave changed everything. And we said, look, we are not offering you a job. What we are offering you is adventure. Now, that is the story of HCL. We, from the beginning, have been very entrepreneurial. And as a result of that, we have produced many, many entrepreneurs. Why does it happen that we choose the right people? How we select people is the actual secret sauce behind it. Right from the beginning, we used to have this concept where we used McClellan's theory from Harvard, where we would select people who had more need for achievement. And these tests that we conducted on hiring people were focused on taking people who had need for achievement.
You mean hunger?
Yeah. No. There are 3 needs which are actually technically what we used to evaluate: need for achievement, need for power, and need for affiliation. What we would do is that when we would be hiring people, we'll give them pictures. And from these pictures, they have to write stories. And when they wrote these stories, based on the language and the words they used, we would pick out people who would show need for achievement. And that's how we created the organization. We had people who actually succeeded in different parts of the company and kept the company going in a very big way.
Interesting, Ajay. And I had a related question. You mentioned a few things. You said hiring people with very high caliber. You used the word entrepreneurship, which I mean some kind of autonomy. And that is what allowed maybe a company like HCL to grow at such high rates and continue to do so for a very, very long time. Give us simple contrast on where do you think things have changed a little bit, in the sense that right now we are seeing this entire industry almost at a growing at much lower pace. In terms of technology, again, whenever we say Gen AI, the tone from most services companies about Gen AI wrappers, right? There's nothing core per se that we are trying to build. Where do you think it has changed? Is it in the leadership? Is it in the way we hire? Because you said I don't think most companies are going there to at least hire the core workforce. So where is, in your mind, what is happening here?
Well, actually, AI has been around for more than 50 years. It's nothing new. It's only when OpenAI came up with ChatGPT 2022 that things started to change. And the pace of change has been phenomenal. I have not seen this kind of pace of change in technology. On an average, you see a new announcement every 4 or 5 days. But that doesn't mean that our industries cannot adopt or adapt to this change. They have the capability. For many, many years, many times we have seen ups and downs in the industry. And the industry has always responded to it in the right manner. Many years ago, there was this whole issue of visas and H-1B and all of that. And the industry came up with this whole offshoring idea. And then suddenly offshoring became the biggest piece. At one stage, onshoring was the big piece. Offshoring was smaller. Today, offshoring is pretty much 95 to 98%. 3-4% is onshore. But the new change that's occurred in the last few years has been nearshore. The demand came from customers and the industry adopted, and they set up facilities in Poland and all other kinds of places where the nearshore requirement came up. Industry has been, it's not an Indian industry anymore. It's a global industry from India. All the companies are global. So they've understood the requirements of customers. They've understood the changes that customers want. They have understood the pace of change also. So I think the industry has responded brilliantly over the last 15, 20 years of the change that's occurred from year 2000 to the internet bubble to what you're seeing today, the emergence of Gen AI. The challenge that the industry faces today is a little different. Because of AI and automation, a lot of work that was done by services companies changes or it goes away. So therefore, there has to be a replacement for that. Because if you don't need coding anymore, you don't need people sitting in call centers anymore, chatbots are going to take over. All of that change is something that we have to now adopt to. Find new areas and new geographies to be able to overcome the reduction that is happening.
Let me take it one step further, right? So in the direction that you were almost alluding to. So there have been many business model, engagement model type of changes that have happened. At the same time, when you think about a technology services firm, somebody who specializes in technology, the kind of expectation a customer or potential customer should have is that these are the folks who are at like really high degree of understanding of technology. At the same time, if you look at what is the general perception in the market, it is not necessarily at that space, right? And I'll just push you on one more point with an example. So if you look at a company called Palantir. So Palantir, and you're as a student of this industry for about 12, 15 years, like from 2002 to 2015, it was just a pure play tech services firm. It used to deploy people on site, do maybe higher end software development for customers, and that's it. That company today is valued at close to $300 billion. Even the largest IT services firm, Accenture, is valued at $250 billion, right? Only the last 5 years have they made this pivot on saying that, hey, we have IP product, It will help you make things better. We have these things that we'll deploy. We'll do it at scale. We'll do it faster. We'll make bespoke software almost at disposable speeds, right? Why is this happening from a space which is not in India, right? We are the ones who are leading this space. We still don't have companies who have solid IPs that they can lay claim on or use that as the big revenue generator. Why do you think that we are still lacking on this side?
See, about 10, 15 years ago, when I used to walk into a drawing room conversation, everybody used to ask me, why don't we have a Microsoft in India? Why don't we have a Google out of it? Now you're asking a very similar question. But when I start to answer that question, I also say that, look, things are changing. Last 10 years, the country has moved on and created software product companies. That's a very major change that has occurred. And the leading of that change has been the development of the India stack and UPI and Aadhaar. So I think today we have an answer to that drawing room question, that we have an India stack which is world class. So now if that becomes the gold standard for us to look at, then what stops us from being bigger in the product business and IP business? Interestingly, HCL took a view about 7-8 years ago that we must also create a software product business. And so instead of starting from scratch, HCL went and bought a whole bunch of IBM products, $1 billion, and converted that business to a global product business which is run separately. And it's called HCL Software. And today, HCL Software is $1.5, $1.6 billion, which is the largest software product company of this country and 18th largest in the world. My view is that these things we can do because we come from that background of understanding software. Now, the product part is very different from the services part. People you need are different. The product management part is different. Product sales part is different. Product positioning part is different. It really is a different kind of business. But the base capability still exists and the availability of manpower still exists. So I think this change has to happen at a much faster pace. We have to move as a country from being a services nation to being a product nation in every area. Even in electronics, which I'm deeply involved in, what are we doing today? We are only in the services business, EMS, electronic manufacturing services business. We are not doing products. Unless we move the country from services to product, we are not going to be getting out of the middle income trap. We will remain at a lower level of per capita income. So I think that change is something we need to push for and make it happen, whether it's the software services industry or any other industry.
No, that's very well put, Ajay. And we remember that the initial contribution of the IT services was to even create some of these large in-house training institutions, right? Like HCL was well known, Infosys, more legendary in terms of the Mysore facility, etc. At the same time, being close to the industry, one of the things that I observe is we don't see that kind of focus on like hyper training people either on new technology or existing. Do you think it's a right thing to say that the focus on really creating talent for technology has reduced, where people are now in this talent war? Can I hire better from there? Can I hire better from here? Do you think that is happening? And what is your advice, looking at this for so long?
I think that it is happening both ways. Training is still going on, upgradation is still going on, and hiring ready-made people is on a big scale today because people are wanting to move faster to respond to the challenges of the market. And hence, this change is going to continue to happen. But one big thing that has changed in the last 10 to 15 years is that we are no longer just delivering services. We are also delivering advice and consulting. That piece has been added by a large number of top companies. So that is the big change that's occurred. And today we are not out there saying that I can do anything you want. We are now saying I can add value. So that's the change that's occurred. Now, within the software services industry, there are certain verticals where we have great capability, which is something that stands very tall as far as India is concerned. And one of them is the R&D exports. See, the R&D exports don't get affected, majority, by the evolution of AI that is taking place today. As a matter of fact, R&D will be benefited by using Gen AI. For example, you can design a chip better if you use AI. So this part is something, I mean, I've been associated with that from very long in HCL. I was very much part of the original Cisco Development Center, et cetera, and the chip development centers, etc., that we were setting up. This is how HCL started. HCL was a hardware company, went into technology, and the first thing that we did was R&D expense. But in addition to that, we also innovated on creating infrastructure services. A lot of these verticals that got created over years are there to support us for growth, also to differentiate us. So the consulting part, the advice part is something that is definitely happening. But I'm quite clear that India must move towards products. Key reason why I say this is that if I see the recent war, we demonstrated our technology capability. Okay, we didn't need to worry about whether the technology that was against us came from China, America, or Turkey. Indian technology won over the technology that was available from others. This capability, this ingenuity, this innovation thinking is there in India. I've always very strongly believed that the Indian mind is capable of doing anything. Going forward, I feel very positive that we will all adopt to this change of going towards more IP orientation. And I think that's necessary. Just this Sunday, I delivered a lecture on Technology Day. And Technology Day is celebrated on exactly the same day when the Pokhran blast happened. The thing that I was talking about is that India now needs to move from Atmanirbharta to what I call Atmiyata. And therefore, we now need to be very clear that our future lies in having technologies of our own. And therefore, we have to have technology sovereignty. So whether it is quantum, whether it's semiconductors, whether it is drones, any area, we now need to focus on being an IP country and owning technology. And we need to create tomorrow's Qualcomm in India in the next 10 years.
You mentioned two things. One, at the start, you mentioned hunger, and people who have them are the ones that make great leaders and better performers. Second, you mentioned the whole thing around consulting, which we are now starting to do. Maybe I'll give a cricket analogy, right? For example, in 2002 NatWest series, when Saurav Ganguly's team actually won against some of the toughest opponents in England, and he removed his shirt, right? That attitude change was a very different thing that happened then. Somehow I feel the IT industry, especially the India folks, need that kind of a moment, because even now the positioning that they have or we have is that of we will tell them what has to be done, versus if they, when the same company goes and speaks to a Palantir, they will listen to them. They will say that, okay, these guys will tell me what needs to be done. I don't think we have a problem on capability. It's also about how we position, the mindset, the confidence. Is that something that you're also seeing and maybe coaching some of the leaders of other organizations on?
You see, I've always believed that any organization has to be sales-led. I've written about it in my book also. There's a full chapter called salesmanship. This is something that I tell all the startups that I actually work with. I tell them that if your CEO is not sales-oriented, you'll never succeed. That's the big thing that is there in a typical HCL type company. HCL has always been sales-led. We have absolutely marvelous salespeople leading the company. And this has been a tradition in our company. This is something that is adopted by all others today. Till about 10 years ago, people in other companies used to think that technology will sell. Sorry, technology alone doesn't sell. Salesman sells the technology. That's the difference. So I think it's all has to be deeply sales-led, and the confidence comes from having great salespeople as part of your team. And many times this discussion has taken place in many companies that salesmen are born. That's bullshit. Salesmen are created and trained. And at one time, sales was considered an art. It's not an art, it's science. And behind that science sits very deep processes which are created to support sales. So for example, 10, 15 years ago, I remember HCL had created a factory where we used to actually create a strategy for each account, which was based on deep study of that account, their balance sheet, their P&L, their customers, their competitors. And so when a salesman walked into an account, he was exceedingly well prepared. And then when a proposal needed to be created, the proposal came back to the factory to be. All these are part of the process of sales. And that strong process orientation is what will continue to hold us in good stead as we go forward.
I think the reason you see me smiling is this is something that is very close to our heart as well. And one of the things that we have noticed, and the reason I brought up the HCL Leadership Factory up front, is that each of these HCL leaders are natively extremely good sales folks. Yes. And if I look at the industry right now, I would say that there is almost a very significantly declining number of these really good salespeople that we see across the board. And one of the questions I really wanted to ask you today was exactly this, right? So there was a time when almost everyone who had to grow up in the career was a really, really good high hustle salesperson. We have seen a significant drop in that kind of layer. Maybe the number of pure play or really good salespeople has dropped. The consultative sales folks have not increased that much. The industry had it a little easier for, like, say, a decade or so when there were a lot of incoming RFPs, things were moving okay. You didn't need to really sell. Or was the model different, right? Because HCL had a both product and you had hardware selling. So people had honed their skills there. There were product selling. Then there were services. Where do you think it has maybe fallen back a little? And what is your recommendation to the leadership of the services companies to grow more of this high hustle sales team?
You may be right there, because when you're doing so well and your margins are at 40-50%, you become complacent. That era is over. And I think India always responds extremely well to crisis. So this crisis is upon us today.
So you agree that we are in crisis?
No, crisis is definitely staring at us.
Yeah.
Reason is that automation and AI are serious headwinds to the services business. Very, very clear. I mean, that's demonstrated in the number of additions of manpower that's happening or reductions in manpower that's happening. So I think this crisis will be very good for us. And we will bring out our best during crisis. I mean, I always refer to COVID when we had zero PPEs and zero ventilators and zero vaccine. And in 12 months, we had everything. Well, all of India came together. So I think all of the industry should come together into thinking differently. You see, what has happened is that in the last 10 years, there's been a huge preponderance of global companies into India, in addition to Indian companies. These global companies have taken some great people into their fold. So that challenge is there for Indian companies today. Now, should we fight them? Should we make them partners? Should we start supplying to them? Is the decision that each company is taking and struggling with. Should I compete with a GCC, or should I complement a GCC, or I set up a GCC company within my company and support them? So this is where the challenge is today, to adopt to this changing situation. There are 1,700 GCCs today and more are coming. And thank God for the war, it's over. Otherwise, all investors would have started to rethink India. So I think this situation has to be looked at very differently. This is a new challenge. The GCC is a completely new challenge.
Ajay, that's very fascinating that you call GCC a new challenge. Because if you look at Zinnov, we've been doing both parts for about 20 years.
You've been always helping people to come and invest. Is that issue specifically with you? Because it is something that you cannot ignore.
Correct. So in your mind, let's maybe just spend a couple of minutes on the GCC topic itself, right? There are two ways that we are saying the services company is trying to respond to this. One is by, say, trying to compete. So when I say compete, it is, having their own models, like HCL has a model, Wipro recently has one. Every company has some model which is a flavor of BOT++ kind of an offer. At the same time, what a company really is looking for is somebody who can help them set up, hire people, etc. Do you really think this helping companies set up GCCs is a place where service providers should even really spend a lot of management bandwidth, or there is enough and more work to be had as a technology specialist and say that, hey, we specialize in this. I don't want to give you 50 data engineers in that GCC. I know what to do with my data engineers, and I will supply you the semi-finished product or a work package per se, which is the direction the industry had always gone, right? We had always gone higher. Now, suddenly we seem to be going to a place where we are saying, hey, we will hire for you in India. which is a recruitment business and not even a services business. So I want your, candid take on that.
Tough question because it depends on company to company. It depends again on their reach. It depends upon their verticals and it depends on their quality of leaders and salespeople. If they have the capability to lead and sell, why would they go to GCC? They should have the confidence to be able to do it on their own. But if the company is feeling, oh, maybe for the next 3 years, I'll do GCC++, that's the way they're thinking. So they're thinking, okay, doesn't matter. In the meantime, let me get some low hanging fruit. Okay. So to me, it's a very temporary strategy. A long-term strategy is to upgrade yourself, do more and more consulting, achieve that high level of sales capability, and stand on your own 2 feet. And let the GCCs come. They are going to come and there's no harm. Because the way I look at GCCs is a very positive way also. When I look at my semiconductor area, I look at GCC as a great training ground for new startups to come out from there, who will be tomorrow's Qualcomms. So the fabulous companies are all going to get born out of GCC because the GCCs are developing real products in this country. And Intel or NVIDIA or any of these companies are doing great work. See, earlier they used to do a part of the work. From what I understand when I talk to the Intel and AMD guys, they say now they're literally developing the whole chip here. So that capability is not there in the country today. That capability of great value to India. So we need to look at the positives of this GCC. And I look at it that way as well.
So Ajay, I think you are segueing into a very contemporary and interesting portion that I also wanted to speak about, which is the whole Make in India from a hardware and electronic standpoint, which you have been very close to in terms of evangelizing and even helping put together from a government of India perspective and creating some of the policies and incentives. I think one of the questions that even I get asked very, very bluntly is it the right thing to do in terms of trying to become another China when it comes to semiconductor manufacturing? One, firstly, is that even the right ambition? Second is, do we want to set ourselves certain type of achievable goals? And is it even achievable from where we are? Almost a net importer, about 80% of all our electronics, smartphones, etc. are imported to try and become a net exporter. Is that even a fair target for us? And I'll let you add your thoughts on that.
There's no option. When COVID happened, we were deeply short of semiconductors in the country and a lot of our industries got stopped. You tell me any product that runs without a semiconductor.
Correct.
Maybe a pencil. Rest of every product has got semiconductors and software. India being so damn good at software and having great design capabilities sitting inside India. We have the largest designers of semiconductors in the world sitting in India. We're just not using them. They are being used by GCCs and by Indian software companies in a very big way for addressing global requirements. But we don't do anything for ourselves. When we started to look at the whole idea of a semiconductor mission, I wrote about it 25 years ago that we must have our own fabs. And I also wrote one line, Mantri used everywhere, saying the electronic import bill will be higher than the oil bill. I wrote that 25 years.
And that's true.
That is true. If we are faced with that situation, is there an option? You look at the war that happened just now. Was it a war between India and Pakistan? I think Pakistan was a proxy for China. And so it's very critical that we start to create our own industry, our own products, design our own systems, and be self-sufficient. Beyond Atmanirbharta, we need to have Atmiyata, which is, technology sovereignty. And I think here semiconductors plays a very major role. I think 5-7 years ago, I read about this senator in America. His name was Ben Sasse, Senator for Intelligence. And he wrote a very beautiful line. He said, the next wars will be fought with semiconductors. And they were. The last 5 days has proven that that's exactly what happened. Because space technology, NAVIC technology, all these were used.
Correct.
We did not use GPS during this war.
Yeah.
We used NAVIC. So I very strongly believe that we have no option. This government is the first government that has genuinely taken the right steps in creating the electronics industry. What they did was phase one, create scale. So the PLI got created, large number of manufacturing started. They moved a lot of electronic manufacturing to India. Then phase 2 was to set up fabs. That is over. Phase 3 is now coming up, which is going to be more advanced fabs, where you will start to see display fabs, compound semiconductor fabs, R&D for fabs, etc., and supply chain for all things that are required for a fab, the gases, the chemicals, and those kind of things. I think the government is absolutely on track. When Mr. Krishnan took over as IT secretary 2 years ago, in my first meeting, I told him, sir, the biggest hole in our electronic strategy is that we don't have a component ecosystem. 3 weeks, 4 weeks ago, the component scheme was announced. And I rang him up and reminded him, I said, you have done the right thing. But interestingly, when the component scheme was announced, the Honorable Minister said something very unusual. He said that we will select only those companies who create design capability within the company and will be Six Sigma.
Interesting.
Very interesting, because you should not just get technology to make components. You should have your own R&D to be able to design your own components and add value in the company. The value sits in design. It doesn't sit in just manufacturing. And today we have an outstanding team at MATI. And that helps us because Krishnan is superb. Ashwini Vaishnav is superb. And the team below is also very, very good. What I see is that this was needed and it is being done. We have a long way.
So Ajay, I wanted to pick you on the sales-led or the sales-first organization from IT services context. And I could not agree with you more on that side. The more I speak to the leaders, I see this constant struggle to find the right leadership who is able to have this structured process plus the hustle to sell. In your experience, and maybe if you were to advise some of them, is there a way to maybe create either an ecosystem or a way to train some of them to actually be really good salespeople? Because right now, somehow you are almost supposed to automatically graduate to become a salesperson. You do great delivery, then you become account manager, and then you become a salesperson. In my mind, this process doesn't work, right? It's a hit and miss. Some person might be good, naturally they work, but more often than not, they are almost set up to fail. We know how to train people on technology. Is there a way that, this should happen as a process to train people to become good sellers or consultative sellers on technology?
I think very critically, training of salespeople should be done before they become salespeople. If they're delivery people, select right people from there who have the need for achievement. If they don't have the need for achievement, it's a waste of time. Test them for need for achievement. If they have for need for achievement, they start to become heads of delivery, then they become account managers, then they become sales managers. Before they become account managers, give them a solid 3-month sales training. If you don't do that, you are not going to be successful. Yeah, see, what we used to do to test in HCL was that we would just take 2 salespeople, make one a seller, one a buyer, and have an actual conversation take place in a video where we would record this. So one becomes a salesman, the other becomes a buyer, and they are all fighting with each other to be successful. And the better guys wins. You will be able to figure out whether they've achieved that capability or not. I mean, this is a very simple model, I'm telling you. There are many other ways to test.
Got it. So that and also the sales process, like you mentioned.
Yes. See, the biggest challenge with salespeople is they never follow processes.
It's supposed to be that way almost, right? Because they...
सब लोग सोचते हैं मैं तो हीरो हूँ, मुझे कोई लिखने की जरूरत नहीं है, मुझे CRM में एंटर करने की जरूरत ही नहीं है, मेरे को सब कुछ पता है.
I know everything, I don't need to put it in CRM.
Well, that doesn't work. That heroism doesn't work. It is process.
So what you're saying is, one, you need discipline, you need process, and obviously you need to be equipped, well-trained, and also motivated. You need to have that hunger in the first place of achievement.
You see, what we used to do in HCL was that we had a senior management training program, which when we would hire from an institute of management, we would give them an 18-month plan. In these 18 months, this is what you have to achieve.
Wow.
It was called a 0 or 1 plan. So in 18 months, if you succeeded, you would go 2 levels up in the company.
Or you would exit. So Ajay, almost my last question to you, and I wish I had more time. My last question is everything that's happening today. If today you were to start a tech services firm, what areas would you look at? What type of people would you hire? And what kind of mix of product versus services versus consulting revenue would you target in the next 3 years?
I wouldn't start a services company again.
I was kind of expecting this answer because, previously we discussed this, right? I like your answer. I would not want you to change that. The next question I have is, Do you actually see another $10 billion IT services company happening? Or do you think that structurally the market has too many players, is not that easy, it is a bit saturated, you'll never get something, or it'll be in so long, or it'll be only through M&A? So what's your take on that?
I feel that a 10 billion company can majorly happen through M&A, because for you to create it from scratch to 10 billion is not going to be easy.
Even not scratch, let's say a $1 billion company, can it even structurally aspire to be 10 billion? Or
Yes, it can, but it will need
M&A?
for M&A for it to be pacey. The pace of growth will be otherwise organic, which is not good enough. Because unless you grow faster, the challenge that you will face is that you'll start to stunt your growth. That's how HCL succeeded by buying 18, 20 companies.
Got it.
Even nobody's in software, you are a hardware company.
Great. So let me put the same question slightly differently. If in the technology space, you were to start a business, which area or what would that be on?
I would love to start a semiconductor fabless company and become like Qualcomm in 15 years.
So you're saying almost the Intels and Qualcomms. Intel has fab, but yeah, fabless, interesting. We do have the talent, of course. Like we are the global factory for ASIC and a lot of the semicon talent. What are the other ingredients that are still needed to make that business succeed? Like you would start that, you will have talent, but I'm sure there's something more that is needed, right? What else is needed?
Alone talent will not help you. You need great business managers also. And you need CEOs who can lead and be able to grow at a pace that is required in today's environment. धीरे धीरे चलने से काम नहीं चलेगा. We have to go faster. I mean, even those days, we started in 1976, we became the #1 IT company in 10 years. So it is possible to do. And I think when I wrote my book, I called it Just as Fire. Why did I write that? Because I was deeply influenced by Dr. C.K. Prahlad, who taught me. And he used to say, A is greater than R. And what did A is greater than R meant? It said, if you have the aspiration, resources will happen. So in India, if you have the aspiration, why can't you be a Qualcomm of tomorrow? Why can't we create an NVIDIA from India? I absolutely believe in 15 years, we will do so. Because what it needs is aspiration.
I think I thoroughly enjoyed, and maybe this just added a huge dose of energy for all of us, and I'm sure to the audience who listens to this. I think firstly, thank you so much. If I were to just summarize the top 3 or 4 takeaways for me, right? I think the first one is where you said that services organization has to be sales-led, and there's no escaping the fact that you need salespeople and you need sales process and discipline for sales folks to follow the sales process. Second, I think what you really mentioned is in terms of even the mindset of having hunger, having confidence to speak to the client in a certain fashion, that you are able to win projects and business in the quality that you require, right? And almost in the same way, you kind of alluded to the fact that GCCs is not something that you should try and aspire to be getting into or competing against, because as a technology leader, you have space to do a lot more if you are able to up-level your own sales and tech capability. I think that's the second very important point. The third thing you mentioned around talent and our consistent ability to create talent, especially you mentioned semiconductor space and how the GCCs are even helping that. I think that was a great point. And finally, I will remember your advice on not starting a tech services company if I were doing it today. So I think, Ajay, this is seriously excellent conversation. Thank you so much.
Don't forget A is greater than R.
A is greater than R. Yeah. No, that is great, Ajay. So I think also I would like to thank you for the yeoman service that you're doing in terms of this nation building, in helping us as a country go up the value chain in terms of technology and technology manufacturing. Thank you. I'm really honored to have spoken to you. Thank you for being part of the Zinnov journey as well. And I do remember that you said, I know Zinnov for a long time. That itself is a big compliment for us. Thank you so much, Ajay. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Business Resilience Series. Stay tuned for more such interesting episodes. You can listen to our podcast on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from. To know more about Zinnov, visit our website, www.zinnov.com, or drop us a note at info@zinnov.com. Follow us on Twitter @Zinnov for regular updates on our content. Thank you again for listening to the Business Resilience Series of the Zinnov Podcast.